So poisoning obviously sounds like a bad thing, but can you tell us why? Like what does lead paint mean for my health? What does poisoning look like when it comes to lead?
So specifically for small children, because it's in subsets, but for small
Mm-hmm.
children, what it does, since they are still growing and developing, if they are exposed or unfortunately poisoned due to lead paint or
Mm-hmm.
lead dust, it significantly stunts their mental and physical development, which in the long term can lead to a large overview of health conditions. So it could be, learning deficiencies, behavioral deficiencies, things that we see regarding like like rage or temper or
Yeah.
impulse control. It really is a domino effect that affects children when they're at that crawling age, that toddler
Yes.
age. And there are a lot of systems in place and organizations in place that are working to provide resources for that.
And that includes your work. So we hinted that we would come back to it. So let's do that now. We talked about some of the projects that you manage or support at United Way. Let's go into more detail. Maybe we can start with Lead Safe Cleveland since we're
Yeah.
already talking about lead.
We're already there. Yeah. So Lead Safe Cleveland Coalition is a coalition of over 600 organizations, which is gigantic and phenomenal. And they all collectively have the same goal of ensuring that no child in the city of Cleveland is poisoned by lead. And through the coalition, property owners are offered financial and construction management assistance, in addition to actual education on lead safety and workforce development and training on how to mitigate and deal with lead hazards in their
Mm-hmm.
property to ensure and help make their properties lead safe. So this lead safe model is a proven and effective model to reduce lead poisoning,
Mm-hmm.
and this model has actually been it's used in Cleveland, but it's from a Rochester model and a couple of other cities models that have utilized this and seen very effective goals over the course of 10 to 15 years.
That's awesome. So it sounds like we've got some things happening,
Yes.
working against lead mitigation, lead poisoning prevention in the city. But you also talked about a couple of other things. Let's go to Right to Counsel. What's Right to
Yes.
Counsel?
So, Right to Counsel Cleveland is another national model. It gives eligible low income Cleveland tenants free legal representation in eviction hearings in Cleveland Housing Court. So, this is allowing for those tenants that may be, marginalized or vulnerable communities resources so that when and if they are in eviction court that they have representation, they know their rights, and they have someone advocating for them, because you generally will have the property owner who has that legal representation.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the reasons that people might want to reach out to a Right to Counsel? Like, is that exclusively because I'm facing eviction, or could it be about my housing quality?
Great question. It's a combination of both. So, what I do enjoy a lot about Right to Counsel Cleveland is that, the front door of it is unfortunately an eviction filing.
Mm-hmm.
However, with that, it comes with an assortment of education of, what to do with your property or with your monthly rent if you do have housing conditions that are of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
They try to educate tenants regarding putting your rent in escrow and how to navigate the court system and how to, even if your home conditions aren't of a higher quality, how to stay in alignment with your lease agreement with your landlord.
Yeah, which to me, again, this isn't my area of expertise, but sort of goes back to this idea of discrimination that, to use your phrase, domino effects over time. And so maybe I don't want to pay my rent because my landlord isn't keeping it in a way that is safe for me. And we can think about that environmentally because that's sort of our focus here, but it could be lots of things: mold that can cause asthma, lead that can cause a variety of issues down the line. So it's very important work that you're doing. I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Seamer Family Stability Initiative. I know that I sit 3 chairs away from you, and I sort of knew these first two, but this is the one that I feel the least like I understand what United Way is doing, what you're doing with this.
Fantastic. Yes. So the Seamer Family Stability Initiative, it's a financial assistance and coaching assistance program that is aimed to assist low-income families that encounter some type of crisis that could put them at risk of being housing unstable, or even for the children or child in the home, school unstable. So it's a two-generational model and approach that focuses on ensuring that families stay in homes and that children stay enrolled in school.
That's important. That feels crucial because we're trying to build these building blocks rather than domino effects, building blocks for success.
Build them up. Don't knock them down.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. And I think there's one more, which is
Yeah.
Scholar House. If you could tell us a little about that too.
Yes, Scholar House Cleveland, I'm going to say it again, is another national model that has been very effective to provide affordable housing and wraparound services to low-income college students and their children. This helps to support their educational success and promote their economic mobility. So it is a structure. Families live in the structure, the apartment complex, and the apartment complex provides on-site childcare, connection with resources, financial coaching and counseling to help build them up economically and also to guide them through the process of being enrolled in school.
That's wonderful. You're doing a lot of really good work. And obviously, we'd love to keep tracking the outcomes of all of these programs and hoping that we do see those building blocks, building up communities and people who live in them. What are some of the things that you also see in the housing space that you feel could be relevant to environmental health outcomes, whether United Way is working on them or not, or some of those disparities that we see because of the historic disenfranchisement?
Yes, so it may be an unpopular opinion, but I am a big fan of tiny homes in modular homes. I think it's really important within the housing landscape to identify the need to have different types of housing stock and housing options out there besides a traditional single-family home, apartment complex, townhome. Having a variety of housing stock options can provide some resources to get us to housing stability and working on the displacement of individuals.
Yeah. And also, like, environmentally speaking, it literally saves room, or at least it can. I guess it depends on where you put your tiny house and use what you need. I'm not saying that everyone has to have a tiny house. I live in a single family house, but
Yes.
I live on a teeny tiny little property with lots of other houses that are close to me. But I like the idea that you're talking about giving people options.
Yes.
This intersection between housing stability, which is what you're going for, but then also the environmental impact, both on our environment for the sake of the environment itself, but also healthier environments for the people who live in them.
Yes.
I'm a fan of tiny houses, at least
I
as
do
a
too.
theory. I don't think I've ever really been in one.
I have never been in one, and I know that it could not work for me.
Sure.
But I also feel like there are people who would very much thrive in one.
Sure.
You know, they have a small footprint. They maybe do some camping outside, and it could be mobile, whatever works for them.
Absolutely. And I mean, to be fair, my grandfather lived in a trailer, and so I've been in trailers before. And a lot of tiny homes are decked out trailers. And that is a whole different conversation about how we talk about what rich people do when they want to live in small spaces versus just someone who
Yes.
lives in small spaces because that's what their income allows. But I don't want to take us too far off track. I also think that it would come to some public policy decisions about where we are allowed to zone for different kinds of living, right?
Yes, it's definitely something that people should think about, and it does provide me with a recommendation of those who are interested in discussing or learning about redlining further or even zoning. The book, The Color of Law, is a pretty fantastic book. It's very good to read through and through, to do a deep dive, but also just to skip around depending on your interest level.
Yeah, that's a great one. I loved it. And we'll link that and all the other books that we've talked about and programs in the show notes. People can find them. So there's lots of ways that we've already talked about people who want to get involved. They can look more into the programs that United Way supports, the programs that you support. Most of those are United Way partnered with lots of other organizations,
Yes.
just to be clear. But then also we talked about some books people can read. What about someone who might be experiencing issues related to housing stability or quality? Where would you recommend someone go if they need help?
There are a large amount of resources within the greater Cleveland area. So my recommendation always is for someone to call 211. So 211 is a free community service to obtain information about social, health, housing, and government services. It's open 24/7, 365. The number is literally 211, and you are connected with a specialist who can guide you through programs and resources that you could be eligible for and connecting you with those organizations.
Absolutely. And that's anonymous, right? So
It
I
is.
don't have to tell anybody who I am.
Right, completely anonymous.
We have United Way of Greater Cleveland, where we work, runs the one locally here in Cuyahoga County and a couple of other counties in Ohio. So we'll link the Ohio one in the show notes, but there are 211s all over the country, right?
Yes.
So you can call 211 from wherever you are, and you are highly likely to be covered by
Yes.
211 in your area. Well, Ashley, This has been so great. So why don't we tell the viewers how they can keep up to date with our show and other resources that you might recommend? If you'd like to stay connected to us, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at One Planet Media. That's ONE1. And if you'd like to rewatch full episodes, check out our YouTube channel, All Things Green Show. You can find all of our sources from today's episode in our show notes. Ashley, do you have any organizations you'd like to plug?
Both the Cuyahoga County Public Library and Cleveland Public Library Systems, they provide great author speaker series, consistent programming for children and teens, and is one of the places I love riding my bike to.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the show with me, Ashley. We'll be back at the same time next week. Thank you for being a part of the global sustainability movement.